good morning, and great morning to you guys. Welcome to another fabulous episode of Exit Strategies Radio Show. Hey, I am your host, Corwin J. Millett, broker and owner of Exit Realty Low Country Group in beautiful North Charleston, South Carolina. Guys, this is your first time listening to this show. Whew, you are in for a treat because our mission here is very simple for our loyal listeners. Y'all know it, and I need y'all to say it with me. To empower our community through financial literacy and real estate education, guys. We're legacy building. That is what we do. So I want to say thank you to all you who tune in locally in the Charleston arena. I want to thank all of you who are now listening to us worldwide. It is extremely humbling to me that you guys take time out of your schedules to tune in, to listen while you're on the go. Maybe you're at work and you're listening to what we're talking about and taking notes and taking heed. And most importantly, applying this information to you where it is relevant. So guys, I'm extremely humbled by that. And I thank you for continuing to support us here at the show today. We have a guest for you. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about the beginning. We're going to come through and talk about the now, and we're going to talk about where it's going. We have none other today with us than Billy Daniel. Now, Billy, hey, he is a real estate guy. He is not only an investor, but he's also a co-owner in a real estate company, and I'm going to let him tell you about it. But he's going to share his insights and expertise on how you can leverage and build a real estate portfolio. Billy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Corin. How are you doing today?
I am incredible, man. Thank you so much for being on with us. Now, Billy,
Absolutely.
if you could introduce yourself, give our listeners a 50,000 foot view of who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm Billy Daniel. I live in Russellville, Arkansas, and nobody knows where that is, and that's okay. We're just in the western half of the state. That's probably about as good as it's going to get. I'm originally from North Texas. I moved here for some employment opportunities. And a couple of years ago, my wife decided she wanted to open her own real estate brokerage. She had been an agent for several years. A few months into that adventure, we decided it was time to just burn the ships, and we went all in on real estate. So ever since about this time in 2022, actually, I've been full-time in real estate, both investing and as an agent, and hopefully, depending on how the next month goes, a broker. We'll see.
So, Billy, what gave you the bug? What was it that said, hey, I want to do this? What was it?
I think it is a big part of it is having control over my own decisions, my own life. A lot of people my age, early 40s, lived through 2008 financial crisis. And I think so a lot of people saw that the too big to fail institutions made some risky decisions, and then they got bailed out. And a lot of the people we know paid the price for it. And that kind of stuck with me through the years. And I didn't like the idea of some executives in a boardroom 1,000 miles away can make a decision on hitting their earnings projections. Then that would have drastic influence on my life if they decided that I just cost too much. So having that control over my own destiny was really a huge draw for why I got into real estate. Plus, I just think it's fun and interesting. There's always that.
Well, it'll give you heart palpitations every now and again. So if you call that excitement, it's like having your own personal roller coaster, so to speak. It definitely is. So, Billy, you guys do investing, right?
We do. We have a few single family homes and a few small multifamily homes, and working on getting our first commercial property, actually.
Good deal. Good deal. So with that, tell us, what's your strategy? What is it that you do? What is it you start with, etc.?
We're mostly long-term rentals. We live, Russellville is a little college town. There is a university here with a sizable student population. So we just cater towards the students with our long-term rentals. My goals for investing are really long-term. I'm not looking to get rich real quick. I think that's very hard to do and pretty unlikely. So when it comes to us acquiring a new property, I'm okay to take a little less cash flow on a rental unit on day one, because I know in 5 years, I'm going to get a lot more cash flow plus all the appreciation. I know where we are is that we're lucky in that we can buy investment properties and not have to rely on them to put food on the table. We can afford to operate a very small cash flow, not negative, but small positive cash flow to get us through the early years. So in the long run, it can really start to come back to us.
Good. In our conversation, you've been around, you've seen this, you've been through the crash. Did that deter you at all?
No, I think it was a lot of motivation. I go back to that having control over my own destiny. If I'm going to win or if I'm going to fail, whatever, it's going to be because of me and because of my support system. Can't emphasize enough the support system I have. When I say me, it's the support system I got around me. But having that control and that power over your own destiny, like you said, it's an awesome feeling. At the same time, it's pretty scary.
Well, this business and will give you it has plenty of excitement, has enough excitement to go around to be frank about it. So a tremendous amount of excitement because there's so many things that are uncertain. I mean, we do believe there's some fundamentals within our business that, if you will, certainty about them, meaning that, okay, we know certainly that this is going to happen, meaning people have to have shelter. So people will pay for shelter, right? Because they have to have shelter. That is a necessity. But that is probably where that's where the certainty then gets muddy or gets blurry. And then everything else after that is completely uncertain. And there's people such as yourself, Billy, who set out and take these risks to say, okay, well, look, we know this certainty. And because we believe or we know this certainty, we believe these things. So we're going to invest here in order to trustfully have a return based upon this one certainty, which is people need a place to stay. So you say you invest in and primarily have a portfolio of single family. Why is that? Why do you focus on single family versus other types of properties?
Really, it was just a matter of timing. Whenever we bought our first property, it was in 2018 and didn't really know what we were doing. We knew we had a steep learning curve, but we also knew that you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can do all the educational things, but until you get your hands dirty, you can't really know what to do or what not to do. So we just lucked out in that this little house hit the market. I can't remember what it was listed at. I know we paid $15,000 for it. It was 1,400 square feet and it looked exactly like a house that you would pay $15,000 for. It's supposed to look. Talking vines growing through the windows, the dirtiest kitchen and bathrooms I've ever seen in my life, even to this day. And we've bought some other terrible ones, but it was $15,000. And we're like, you know what? We're just going to take action on this thing and figure it out as we go. And we still have that property. It's actually, I think until this year, it had been our best performing property. I think it just got passed by another one. But that was the one that started it. It was a complete down to the studs, all new mechanical systems, everything. But I learned a lot. And I tell people that ask me about investing now, I was like, you got to start with some basic education. You got to listen to podcasts. You got to read some books. You got to get that basic information, but you're never going to have all the information. Eventually, you just got to go for it and figure it out as you go. So you got to have that faith and you got to have that drive. And I think that's what we had. And I'm thankful we did.
So where do you foresee your portfolio developing? Will you continue to add single families? Will you pursue other types of interest or other niches, if you will, as it relates to properties?
Yeah, for now, I'm fairly content staying in a single family or a small multifamily genre. I foresee in the future starting to trade up with some 1031 exchanges into some larger multifamily, get into some 15, 20 unit. I don't have any aspirations to be one of those guys who can say I own 5,000 units. I don't have that kind of aspiration. I'm just going to be happy with 20 to 30 units that give me some nice solid cash flow to retire on and then have some kind of legacy to pass down to my kids. So that's kind of that's a long run.
That's interesting. So, Billy, we have a tremendous amount of guests on the show. We just recently had an author on who his niche is 1031 exchanges. We've interviewed him before. He talks about it. He built a whole company around it. He helps people around the country do this. And he's written a couple of books. He was just on recently with the latest. And we just talked about this. But what you're talking about speaks to, Billy, forgive this, but it speaks to the beginner, because some people are, okay, we're going to go and we're down the road and we want 100 properties, because we've had people on this show that own hundreds, maybe thousands of properties scattered around the country. And they've developed these systems and processes and doing this and doing that. But then there's the person who, I just want to build and create legacy for my family, for my children. I want to get to a portfolio that cash flows, that as the market ebbs and flows, we gain equity. When in turn, I can live off of this for a portion, but then leave this all to my children. You're speaking to people. So your goal is, you said, roughly 20 some odd properties you like to be able to leave to your children, accumulate that many.
For me, it's more of just it's a manageable number, and I can keep that fairly local. Again, I want to keep it simple. I don't want to go and find markets 3 states away. I know there's good investments there. I know there are guys who will go nationwide, and that's great. But for my particular style and my taste and my risk tolerance, I don't want to do that. I'm just trying to stay around the area and keep it simple. And just for the future, just pay those debts down and have those debt-free properties that are just massive cash flow beasts, and be content with that, as opposed to, 5,000, but I have only 20% equity in them or something. So that's the philosophy I have on it personally.
And there's nothing wrong with that. If you look at it from the bigger picture, the bigger take, the reality is that everybody has to find their niche. What is it they want to accomplish, and so forth and so on. So I know, Billy, you started a REIA, correct?
That's right. I started a local REIA.
So for our listeners, let's talk about this. So for our listeners locally who may have no idea what a REIA is, what is a REIA?
It's a real estate investors association, and they are all over the place. I'm sure Charleston has one at least, maybe multiple. But I started ours here, and we just get together on the second Tuesday of every month at a local restaurant, and for about 2 hours, and we just talk about real estate. And I try my best to bring in local experts that can come in and give some insights that are very specific to our area and the real estate market in our area, to help provide some value to our members, so that everybody has some strong knowledge. Because if, that rising tide lifts all ships. So if I've got an investor in this area and I know he's doing great things, I want to be a part of that. I'm going to help him out, and we help each other out. And that also avoids him from getting that bad landlord rep. You don't want to be associated with the people who are slumlords, for lack of a better word. So having some education and some resources out there for people to get to, a great way to help avoid that, and help everybody out, the whole community.
So for our listeners that are local to Charleston, there is at least one. I think usually a REIA is, because it is national organization membership, all these other things, and usually they're geographical, maybe limited one or whatever in a certain area. I know there's one that meets up in the North Charleston. I think it covers like most of the Charleston region. So for our listeners, guys, there is definitely one, and there may be some other groups or whatever locally. This is a wealth of information that's shared in these places. So Billy, what kind of strategies you guys normally talk about, and how has that been impacting the membership or the members positively?
Yeah. So our last few speakers, I can just say our last few topics is we talked about estate planning, which is, pretty applicable to anybody. Talk about wills and trusts and what you should and shouldn't have. I had a local attorney come in and speak on that topic. I had a local commercial lender come in and talk about how to calculate after repair values and appraised values and things that you would use if you're going to purchase a property. I had a local CPA last year at the end of the year come in and give some tax training for some investors. So they kind of knew what to do getting into the new year and the tax season. So those are just the speakers. That's only a small part of it, of our meeting. A lot of it is open forum, kind of, hey, what's your problem? Well, here's how I solve that problem. And just an open discussion, as well as market updates. And as a realtor, I have great access to the local MLS and the trends and the data. So I'm able to share that with the group, so they know what to look for out in the market as well. So it's just, there's so much to gain out of it, that really, no matter what type of investing you're into real estate wise, there's going to be somebody there who has either done it or knows how to do what you're working on.
It's always helpful. Iron sharpens iron. We work together, and we all are better for it or from it. Billy, you guys own a real estate company. So do you work with a lot of investors through your company or with your company?
Yeah, I tend to handle the investors. So my wife and I are the co-owners. She's the boss. I got to make sure that gets in there. But I tend to stay more on the investing, commercial side of things, and she handles more of the typical residential real estate things. She's very good at working with families and other people who are looking to buy a home to live in, because she can make that connection a lot easier to me. I'm very analytical. So whenever I see a house, I just think numbers and, profits and whatever. So I have a hard time helping people figure out where they're going to put their Christmas tree when it comes Christmas time. That's just not for me. So I'll send those people to her, and she doesn't like working on numbers with investors, so she'll send them to me, and it makes for a great team.
That's balance right there. That is awesome. So, Billy, what does that, you may have just covered it because you spoke about the difference in understanding or being able to help somebody figure out how to lay the house out, what you can put here, so forth and so on. But versus on the other side, just merely being about the numbers. And it takes two different perspectives to carry all that stuff out, correct?
That's right. And you got to sometimes with investors, especially new investors, you really have to help them understand that they're not going to live there.
Mhm.
So they don't need to make it personalized for them. If they really like to have purple paint in the bedrooms, that's great, but you're going to scare away a lot of potential tenants or potential buyers if you're flipping it. So you got to keep in mind that you're not going to live there, and you have to make your property appealing to whoever you think will live there. So I think that is a very important distinction, and investors need to understand that when it comes to buying or selling their properties.
Makes perfect sense. So I'm gonna ask you this question as we lead into what I always call as my mic drop or one of my final questions, Billy. But I'm gonna ask you this question. Why should someone look at starting a real estate portfolio? Why should they look at investing? Why should they consider that?
Yeah, so I give some training every now and then, and I'll tell people there's four ways an investment property will increase your personal wealth. First is the obvious, that's your cash flow. Second is obvious, that's your appreciation. But the other two are your principal pay down if you have long-term tenants or even short-term rental on your loan, and then your tax benefits. So just from a numbers standpoint, there's a lot more out there to help you grow your personal wealth than you would get in most other forms of investing. And the second one goes back to what I talked to in the beginning was you get control over it. If you buy a house half a mile away from where you live, you can control a lot of what goes on in that house. And of course, you're subject to some whims of the market. But for the most part, you can determine how nice that property is. You can determine who gets to live there, what they pay, market dependent, and how much money you make. So there's a lot of control there. And I'll hear people say, well, I don't want to lose all my money. Well, once you get in there and you buy it, you still own that property. So you're not going to lose all your money. You can always resell it and get at least most of it back, probably, if you were smart. So there's a little risk. Obviously, there always is going to be for an investment, but I think it can be a manageable risk, especially with some education and some mentorship.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So, Billy, matter of fact, before we get to that, how can people reach you? How can people get in contact with you?
On Instagram, I am at another flipping couple. It's a great photo of me and my wife for our profile, I got to admit. But then I'm also very active on Bigger Pockets. I don't know if y'all talk about Bigger Pockets much, but you can search for me, Billy Daniel in Russellville, Arkansas, and connect with me on Bigger Pockets. And I'm on there not multiple times a week trying to learn and help others learn.
Good deal. I appreciate that. So, Billy, I call this is really usually our last question. It's a hindsight question, mic drop question, all that kind of stuff, which is if you're able to look back and if you had the view when you started that you have now, meaning you're able to look back, all the experiences, all that stuff that you have now, what, if anything, would you have done differently that would have catapulted you much further down the road than where you currently are?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think I would be faster to take the action that I took. I
Okay.
talked about I did all the reading, all the podcasts, and eventually I just got to the point where I was like, I gotta buy it. I probably would have shortened that time by about half. It's just taking the action is the hardest step. And that first step is the hardest one to go and actually make that purchase. And I think I would have been faster to get to that. And then I would have been faster to, I don't know the right way to say it, learn from my own mistakes through that
Mhm.
first property instead of thinking I was doing everything right and then realizing, 6 months later it was wrong. I think I would have paid more attention to that. So really just, I guess, just the speed of my action is what I would change.
I've had that from a few guests, Billy, that they've said I would have done what I did faster. We get analysis paralysis at times
That's right.
where we pick everything apart, put it back together, and we pick it apart again. And we
That's right.
keep doing that and unfortunately don't act as quickly as we could have. And eventually we say, you know what, screw it, I got to jump. And when we jump, then we're fully committed. So I refer to it as being whole hog committed because when you jump, there ain't no going back. It's like that hog got the bacon on the table. They had to give up something serious in order to be there, but the chicken just had to contribute. So I tell people all the time, when you take the step, take the leap, your whole hog committed, you're all in. So Billy, I want to thank you for being on the show with us today. I want to thank you for taking out your time. I know it's a commitment to be here and for the information that you share to our listeners today.
Hey, thanks, Gordon. I appreciate it a lot. It's been great.
Awesome. It's awesome. For our listeners, guys, look, hey, y'all know how I feel. Y'all know what I say. Y'all know I always put the two of those things together to you, and I deliver it to you this way, which is very simple. I love you. I love you. I love you. And we're going to see you guys